All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to anybody who's currently connecting to today's presentation of Self-Directed 101 held live at our office in Ambler, Pennsylvania. We also do these in person, so if you're ever in the area, feel free to stop by. Today, we're just going to go over the basics of self-direction, and I highly encourage anybody who's watching this to, if you have any questions, just post them in the chat, and I'll be sure to address them. I want any and all questions answered, and if there's a question that I can't get answered, I will have you an answer, um, however I need to get it. All right, so let's get started. So actually, before we get started, we do have a brief disclosure to go over. Everything presented in today's presentation is strictly for educational purposes, and it's not intended to be taken as advice. We're not CPAs, attorneys, or financial advisors at Camaplan. When it comes to a time where you need any sort of those sort of advice, in one of those fields, we highly recommend you consult with your team of professionals. We're more than happy to be a part of that dialogue with your team of professionals to make sure the investment process is quick and seamless. But without further ado, we're just going to jump straight into it. So some things we're going to go over today are basics of self-direction. What is a self-directed IRA? What types of accounts can be self-directed? What types of investments I can make? Some of the investments I'm not able to make with my self-directed IRA. And the process, and we'll touch slightly on tax considerations at the end, but I'll again reiterate, I am not a tax professional. This is more so to queue up a conversation with your tax professional next time you see them. We're about around that time now, so definitely something you can bring up if you have questions for them about this. So understanding self-directed 401ks and IRAs. So what is self-directed? So I help people open up accounts online. And a lot of the times I'll have a question. The first question on the application is what type of account you want to open. Everybody asks, or a lot of people ask, there's no self-directed on this. And that's because self-directed is just an adjective. In reality, the types of accounts that are self-directed, we'll go over in the next slide. But you might go to Fidelity or Schwab or Vanguard, and they say, hey, you have a self-directed account with us. But when they say self-directed, they mean you can direct it at anything off of this list. With a truly self-directed IRA like the ones offered at Camaplan, there is no list. You find the investment that is right for you, and we will help you facilitate the transaction into that investment. And there's a much more broad spectrum of investments you can make with a truly self-directed IRA like the ones we offer. This is a quote from one of our longtime clients: investing in what you know, understand, and can control versus using hope as your strategy. A lot of people come to us, real estate investors, private lenders, angel investors, that they're using their personal funds to do these investments. And they're just learning now that they can actually use their retirement funds to gain the same advantages they do with their discretionary funds in a tax advantage fashion. So this is for people that don't want to be tied to the casino of Wall Street and actually diversify their portfolio, truly diversify their portfolio with these alternative investments that we're going to go over in a little bit. So like I said, some of the accounts that can be self-directed, again, self-directed is just an adjective, they generally fall into two buckets. So you have your tax-deferred bucket and your tax-free bucket. When we're talking about tax-deferred, we're talking when you make your contribution, you don't pay your taxes on the amounts you contribute. However, years down the line, those contributions and any earnings are taxable when they're withdrawn from the account when you take a distribution. On the other hand, you have your tax-free bucket. So in the tax-free bucket, we're talking about you pay your taxes on the funds you contribute in the account, and then whatever that amount grows into years down the line at a qualified age to take these eligible or qualified distributions, that is tax-free contributions and earnings because you already paid your taxes on the front end. The way we like to phrase it is, would you rather pay your taxes on the seed or the crop? With the tax-deferred accounts, you're paying on the crop, or sorry, we like to say pay your taxes on the seed or the harvest. Tax-deferred, you're paying on the harvest. With tax-free, you're paying on a smaller amount or the seed. You have these different accounts listed under each of those buckets. In the tax-deferred, you have your traditional, you have your SEP, Simplified Employee Pension Plan, the Simple IRA or Savings Incentives Match Plan for employers, and then you have your 401ks and other employer plans with the defined benefit plans, the defined contribution plans. And then on the other hand, other end, you have your Roth IRA, health savings account, which is the only account of its type where the contributions are tax deferred. And if coming out for qualified medical expense are also tax free, again, only account of its type. And then you have your educational savings account, also referred to as Coverdell. And those 401ks I mentioned in the tax deferred bucket, you can also, some of them also allow for Roth contributions as well, depending on how the plan was established. A quick comparison for 401ks and IRAs, just to breeze through this. If you have any more specific questions, I'd love to hear them. But basically, the main differences are solo 401ks tend to have much higher contribution limits. 401ks are also the only type of retirement account that you can actually take a personal loan against, either $50,000 or 50% of the account balance, whichever those two amounts is less. And then at the very bottom, you'll also see that UDFI rules do not apply to solo 401ks. UDFI stands for unrelated debt financed income. That's a sort of tax that we'll talk about very briefly at the very end. It does have to meet certain it has to check off a few boxes to actually get that exception, but that's another question to talk over your tax professional when you get to that point. This is a good visual or a graph to show you $100,000 of earnings through different avenues of investment. What do you get to keep out of that 100,000? So we have your W-2 salaries, passive income, and then you have your tax deferred and tax free income with your traditional and Roth IRAs accounts like that. So with your W-2, you earn $100,000. You're in this scenario, you're in about a 40% tax bracket. You're paying federal, state, local. You're paying Social Security and Medicare. Your employer is also paying taxes. So out of that $100,000 you earned, $40,000 goes to Uncle Sam to help him keep the lights on. Then you have your passive income from your investments with rent, royalties, capital gains, dividends, things like that. With this, you're taxed a little bit less because you're not paying Social Security and Medicare, and you don't have an employer to pay taxes on this income earned. So rather than $40,000 going to Uncle Sam, only $25,000 has to go to tax. Still a lot. I'd rather pay zero. And that's where we're going to talk about tax deferred and tax free accounts. That $100,000 you earned is $100,000 you get to keep. However, there's an asterisk next to the tax deferred account because, like I said, when you take that money out, you're going to pay taxes on that amount that you take out of the account. But while it's in the account, you're not paying taxes. But when you take it out, you do get taxed at distribution, where the tax-free account, like the Roth and HSA accounts, those are tax-free. So you take it out for a qualified distribution, $100,000, you keep that $100,000 because you don't have to pay any taxes on it. This is basically touching on the same philosophy. So you have $50,000 in three different ways of investing. You have your taxable income, tax deferred, and tax free. So taxables or W-2 is in blue. Tax deferred is in light green, and tax free is in dark green. And this is $50,000 over 40 years at a 10% rate of return at a 30% tax bracket. After 40 years, you only earn $700,000 because that interest wasn't able to accrue as drastically as in the other accounts. It's important to note that both the tax deferred and tax free accounts both earn $2.2 million. However, when you went to take that money out from the tax deferred account, you ended up paying $700,000 in taxes and only walking away with $1.5 million. I say only $1.5 million, still great, but $2.2 million is a little bit more significant because you're not paying taxes on it. That's why we're a little bit partial to the IRAs here. So, and the Roths in specific. So types of investments, that's probably the second most common question I get when I'm talking to individuals looking to open up an account and dive into self-direction. Can I make this investment? Let me walk through this scenario. What type of investments can I make? And we're going to go over that. So what our clients invest into every day tend to fall into these categories. We're talking about real estate ownership. We're talking about private lending through notes and mortgages, private placements, precious metals, and then we have other, because you're not limited to those. We have people who have invested into tax liens. We have people who have invested in the past into cryptocurrencies. We have had people wholesale. We've had people invest into trees and sell the fruit, agriculture, livestock. The options are pretty vast, like I said, but generally we're going to touch on the top four in a little bit more depth in the next few slides. So when I say real estate, I would say our second top, our second most common investment at Camel Plan. And when I talk about real estate, I'm not in this scenario. I'm not talking about lending on real estate, which we have clients do, or investing in companies who deal with real estate. This is actually your IRA going out and purchasing land. And when I say this can be residential, whether it's single family, multifamily. It could be commercial. It could be undeveloped plots of land. It could be secure. It could be leveraged or unleveraged. And you can also invest into. We do have clients who invest abroad as well with their IRAs. There are more things we can talk about. If you have interest in that specifically, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk to you about that. But your IRA is going out and is the owner of this property. We'll go over this a little bit later as well. But when you're doing these investments, the big key is you're not the investor into these investments when you're using your retirement funds. It's actually your retirement account specifically, which is a separate entity similar to a trust in a lot of ways. And like I said, we'll touch on that a little bit further into the presentation. Next up, another very common asset class at Camel Plan is lending, turning your IRA into a mini bank and becoming a private lender with retirement funds. So these can be unsecured notes. These can be secured via property as a security via mortgage. These can be convertible notes where they turn over into shares of a stock at a later date. You don't have to originate the note. You can actually purchase notes on the secondary market as well. And again, the lender on the notes, they're not you. It's the IRA, a separate entity similar to a trust. Next, we have, let me actually just move this for a second. Next, we have probably the most common investment at Camel Plan that we see is private placements. So before Apple or Amazon or Google or Alphabet, whatever went public, you wouldn't be able to invest into it with your traditional brokerage accounts, retirement accounts. You would have to do it through a private placement, similar to the ones that you can accomplish through a self-directed account at Camel Plan. So these can be LLCs. You're basically just purchasing shares of a company before that company goes public. You're being an angel investor, or your retirement account specifically is being an angel investor into these business ventures. These usually come with subscription agreements and a number of documents that we can help you prepare to submit if you decide to make these investments. We'll walk through the entire process with you through an orientation call and what needs to be done. Definitely the most common asset at Camel Plan that we see. And then last but not least, the asset class we'll go over is precious metals. So the IRS allows that you purchase precious metals as long as it meets certain restrictions, minting restrictions, quality, and purity standards. This is your IRA can actually purchase physical gold, silver, palladium, and platinum bullion, or we also see clients invest into the precious metals composite or PMC ounce, which is actually a combination of those previous four metals as well. So your IRA can actually purchase these physical metals, not just paper, actual purchase and store these metals. If you do purchase these metals, they have to be stored at a depository because you're not able to have physical receipt of these metals while they're owned by the IRA. But through us, we work with a depository, and we can give you more information about that if you have questions or interest specifically about investing into precious metals. I'd love to speak with you about that. It's a pretty quick and seamless process that I can walk you through. Next up, the third most common question I get is, what can I invest into? Or a lot of times people don't even want to know. They just want to see what they can invest into. But it's important to note things that are prohibited by the IRS when working with an IRA. These aren't super common for people that want to invest into them, but the main things is collectibles and life insurance. So any works of art, artwork, rugs, antiques, metals, or gems. However, like I said earlier, there isn't the exception dependent on those requirements for minting and U.S. government minted purity standards and other things depending on the type of metal. But the precious metals dealer you work with will most likely be familiar with these requirements. If not, have them talk to us. Let's all get on a phone call together and we can go over them. Something else to know about prohibited transactions by the IRS is when you're using your retirement account. And these rules, all these rules that I talk about through the entire presentation, I'm not just talking about self-directed IRAs. There's no rule differentiation between self-directed and non-self-directed accounts. All of these rules apply to all IRAs, regardless of whether it's self-directed or not. So when you're using your retirement account to make an investment, the IRS says it has to be an arm's length transaction strictly to grow your retirement account. And when they say that, that means there's no personal use and no self-dealing. So let's say real estate, for an example. When you go out, when your IRA goes out and purchases a property, the IRA is the owner of that property. You, as the account holder, and a number of disqualified persons to you, which I'll go over in the next slide, are prohibited from receiving a direct benefit from the IRA and its investments, as well as providing a direct benefit to the IRA and its investments. When I say in the form of real estate, this most commonly manifests in you, as the account holder, and those disqualified persons cannot live in the property, even if you're paying rent, not even one day out of the week. You're not allowed to live in the property, and you're not allowed to work on the property or put in any sweat equity. So your IRA purchases a property. You or these disqualified persons or any entity that those people own 50% or more of can't go in there and paint the walls, can't go in there and do any of the work, move around furniture, anything like that. The IRS says no. The IRS wants you to go out and pay somebody to do that work with IRA funds. So like I said, there are disqualified persons in addition to you as the account holder, and this graph outlines them pretty well. There are additional ones that you can find on our website, but mainly these are people of lineal, ascent, or descent of you, so parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren. Anybody in blue or dark green is prohibited from receiving those benefits from the IRA or providing them to the IRA and its investments. On this list, anybody of lateral relationships, like in green on this chart, like aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, nieces, nephews, they're okay. But people in blue or dark green, I can't really tell, they're prohibited. Now, before I continue, you can partner with these entities, which is a nice method that we like to show people in our 20 Ways to Fund a Deal article. You can partner with these entities. Your IRA can partner with these entities. Your IRA can partner with your children in investments. It can partner with their IRAs and other entities that may show as prohibited on this list. When we talk about partnering, we can go over that strategy more in depth if you'd like to go over that, or you can download the 20 Ways to Fund a Deal article off of our website. It's a very popular article on how to make investments if you don't have necessarily the entire amount of capital required for that investment. There are a number of interesting ways that you can use to fund those deals, including partnering with these entities and other people's IRAs, family members' IRAs, friends' IRAs, things like that. Now, what does the process look like? It's very simple. A lot of these steps are behind the scenes, and we're here through each step of the way if you have any questions and to guide you through the process. You don't have to be an expert in any of this. Again, feel free to talk to us. And this will also be covered in your orientation call if you decide to get started with CamaPlan. The way it works is you first identify the account that you want to use to fund this investment, open up a similar account at CamaPlan, then you fund the account at CamaPlan. So if you open up a traditional IRA and you have a traditional IRA at Fidelity, we'll do a transfer where we request the funds on your behalf. If you're coming in from an employer plan, you'll initiate a rollover with your plan administrator. On average, that takes about 2 weeks for those funding methods to take place. We process everything on our end within 2 business days of receiving paperwork in good order. When other parties get involved, it tends to vary depending on their processing timelines and other factors. We'll help make sure that it's as expedited as possible and make sure you're prepared for those timelines and let you know ways that you can potentially expedite it with your current custodian. After the account's been funded, you'll receive an automated email notification. You get automated email notifications when any funds are received for the account or when any funds leave the account, whether it be for a purchase or a distribution or anything like that. When the funds have arrived at CamaPlan, you'll identify the investment you want to make, whether it's a property, it's a company you want to invest into, it's a mortgage you want to lend on, something like that. You'll identify the property, the investment that you want to make. We'll help you identify the paperwork that's required for that specific investment. You'll send that supporting documentation into CAMA plan with our asset purchase directive. We send the funds out to the investment provider or borrower or title company, and then all return from that investment goes back to the IRA, and then you can just pretty much rinse and repeat. From the date you open the account to the date you make your first investment, I tell people to expect about 3 weeks. It could be quicker, it could take a little bit longer. It really depends on that funding timeline. But again, important to note, we process everything on our end within 2 business days of receiving paperwork in good order, and we'll try to make sure the process is as expedited as possible for you. Now, why do you need us? That's a lot of good information. Why can't you just go out there and do that yourself? So the IRS actually requires that you have a third party manage the accounts, your retirement accounts. We are that neutral third party. We record all transactions in and out of the account, and then at the end of every year, we report to the IRS on the balances of the IRAs held at CAMA plan. We don't give any advice. Like I said in the very beginning of the presentation, we're not attorneys, CPAs, or financial advisors, but we are a part of your core team of professionals, and that's how you should look at it. We highly encourage that you bring in your CPA if he or she has questions or doubts, or your attorney if they don't fully understand it and they want more insight. If you want to structure something specifically with your team of professionals, bring them into CAMA plan, whether you're sitting down with us in the office or if you want to get on a conference call or an email thread. We're more than happy to make sure that the investment process is as transparent for you and your professionals as you'd like it to be, to make sure that everything's structured to their recommendations. These are some frequently asked questions. We went over a lot of this in the presentation, so I'm not going to really waste too much time. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. If you want to go over any specifics, I love going over scenarios with individuals, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or if you have any questions that are if you like the answer to any of these frequently asked questions, give us a call. I'd love to speak with you. And then lastly, we'll briefly touch on tax considerations. It's not very common, and I'm not a tax professional, so this is something to bring up to your tax professional when you sit down with them next. So usually IRAs do not pay taxes. They're a tax sheltered account, and that's the benefit of them. However, in some rare situations, depending on the specifics of the structure of the investment, the IRA can occasionally have tax liability. And this falls into the umbrella of UBTI and UDFI. So when we say UDFI, we talked about that a little bit earlier, unrelated debt financed income. But to start off, we'll talk about UBTI or UBIT, which is unrelated business taxable income. So when we're talking about UBTI, it's when the IRS deems that the IRA retirement account is doing something outside of the realm the IRA was intended for, excuse me. So this generally falls into if the IRS thinks you're running a business with your retirement account. So 2 main things that I've seen trigger this, and there are more that you can talk over your tax professional, but regardless, they're not very common. But if you think that you may fall into this category, definitely bring it up with your CPA or accountant before you think about doing these things. The 2 scenarios most commonly I've seen trigger UBIT or have heard to trigger UBIT or UBTI is 1, flipping properties. And the caveat with that is, what does the IRS define as a flip? Some people say, oh, if you only do 1 a year, you're okay. Some people say if you buy it and then hold it and then sell it after a year, buy it, hold it for a year and then sell it, you're okay. But these people are not the IRS, and the IRS most likely will never say. But at a certain point, the IRS may say, hey, you're receiving properties and then you're selling properties. That's inventory in, inventory out. You're running a business. So they may hit you with the UBIT tax. Another thing that I've seen potentially trigger UBIT is if your IRA goes out and purchases a plot of land, undeveloped land, and then you say, hey, I want to hire a development company to build on this land. The IRS say, hey, now you're running a development company and you have to pay this UBIT tax. And then quickly to touch on UDFI or unrelated debt financed income. It is possible to obtain financing for a purchase of a property within the IRA. However, that financing it's not your traditional bank financing. It has to be through what's called a non-recourse loan. If you have questions about that, I'm happy to talk about that, or you can talk to non-recourse loan lenders about the specifics of those loans. If you receive that financing, the IRS will say, "Hey, we need your IRA is due taxes." Um, these scenarios again are not very common, and when I've spoken to individuals who have had to pay this tax in the past, they're usually okay with it because they're using their retirement account to earn a greater return than they would be um, with their traditional brokerage assets. And they also would have to pay the taxes if they were making the investment outside of the account, regardless. So it's still a win-win. Obviously, definitely talk it over with your tax professional if you think you may have to pay it, and then you can um, weigh the tax liability with your financial goals directly with them, who have a better insight into your financial background. Here is a list of all the publications, private letter rulings, forms, and IRS documentation where we pulled all of this information to let you know that none of this is made up. We're not making any of this up. If you have trouble sleeping at night, I highly recommend you print these out and keep these by your bedside, excuse me. Um, but this is where we pulled all of the information. It's not made up. And if you take anything from this presentation today, it's my contact information. So if you want to touch on anything a little bit more in depth, if you want to go over the entire presentation together again, I'm happy to do it. Talk about specific scenarios, and even help you through the account opening and funding process. I'm more than happy to be that person for you. Um, and I hope to speak with you soon. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Thank you.